The times are a changing. Republican majority U.S. House of Representatives is set to resume business post midterm polls. And as tradition goes, the first vote the House will take before lawmakers are sworn in will be election of a speaker. Members from both parties will vote for a new U.S. speaker. U.S. Representative Kevin McCarthy struggled to beat hardline conservative opposition after a somewhat weak performance in midterm elections. The U.S. House Republicans, however, struggled to stand in unison, and uncertainty still hangs over the speaker election. The last time a U.S. speaker was not elected, the first roll call, was around 100 years ago. The U.S. House of Speaker plays a vital role in the U.S. government. Speaker presides over the lower chamber of Congress and also stands second in line to the presidency. Republicans have 222 seats in the incoming House. A slim majority in the 435-member chamber. However, Democrats are all set to vote against McCarthy, and there are indications that the Republicans are not united on McCarthy as House Speaker either. Some Republicans believe that McCarthy doesn't fall under their populist views. The Speaker candidate facing rebellion from their own party is not new in the U.S. Congress. Nancy Pelosi also faced internal opposition when she was up for re-election as Speaker back in 2021. Meanwhile, Democrats will begin the next Congress with a fresh slate of leaders after Pelosi and her deputies stepped aside to make way for a new generation of leaders. Here's a look at the procedure for election of a Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. The nominees of the Republicans and the Democrats are decided at an informal vote held at a meeting of the two parties. Kevin McCarthy won the majority Republican vote in a closed-door meeting back in November. Weeks later, the Democrats chose Hakeem Jeffries to become their leader as the party transitioned into a minority in the House. On the floor of the House, the voters will include elected lawmakers present, as well as members of the two parties. After the nominee from each party is read aloud, lawmakers call out the names of their choice for Speaker. That is, from the floor. It's very time-consuming roll call amid much drama on the floor. The clerk then appoints lawmakers from each party as tellers to tally the votes. Now remember, members are not obligated to vote for the party's chosen candidate. To be elected, the candidate needs a majority of votes from House members who are present and voting. Historically, the magic number has been 218 in a 435-member House, but many lawmakers do abstain from voting for any candidate, and that lowers the total number and the majority mark. The elected candidate, the Speaker-elect, is escorted to the chair of the dais where the oath of office is administered. The outgoing Speaker, in this case Nancy Pelosi, hands over the gavel as a nod to the peaceful transition of power from one party leader to the other. For more on this, we are joined by Mark Merowitz, political commentator, also a professor at State University of New York, Maritime College. He's joining us from New York. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us, Mark. It's great to have you. So it seems like Kevin McCarthy will probably most likely have the votes, but this is not a good look for the Republicans right now. What do you make of all of this? And am I right? Do you think Kevin McCarthy does have the votes?
Well, you know, prognosticating in politics, one diplomat once told me, was like making astrology a hard science. Please don't ask me to predict it. You're dealing with Republicans here. And Republicans will never miss an opportunity to shoot themselves in the foot, which is exactly what they're doing here. The long game here is a little bit different than the House. The long game is the Senate and controlling the government and the presidential election in 2024. The Senate in the 2024 election will have 23 Democrats up for re-election. So the Republicans are just doing some self-flagellation and destroying themselves without being unified in 2022. As far as Kevin McCarthy is concerned, it's very hard to know. I think that he has given some concessions, but he's going to have to give some really serious concessions to the right wing of the party. This is very reminiscent of what you talked about previously about Pelosi, because when Pelosi was up for speaker last time, she had to give concessions to her left part of the party. And now McCarthy is being required to give concessions to the right part of his party. The question is, how adamant are those, you call them populists or right or Freedom Caucus, to basically, take the whole procedure down and create this image of disunity. By the way, I looked it up, and in 1855, the speaker vote went to 133 ballots. This would be so destructive to the Republicans and their ability to show that they can run government efficiently. So I think that the end of the day is, you're dealing with Republicans, it's hard to predict. But he's a maybe. Or you may see Steve Scalise, very popular in the House, so he may make it. They're even, the House Speaker does not have to be a member of Congress. So somebody was writing an article, they thought Newt Gingrich should come back. So there's all sorts of off-the-wall things going on here. And if they don't put a cap on it, they're going to lose a lot of traction.
Yeah, that's very true. And, they've got a lot of plans, a lot of committees, and what they want to do right now is really go after, first of all, just in general, Hunter Biden. They want to go after the origins of COVID. They want to set up different kinds of committees on the one hand. But then the question remains whether or not, this is something that the American people would have the appetite for at a time when we're really headed towards a recession. People want kitchen table issues resolved. That's why they voted these Republicans into government. So what are your thoughts on that and how the Republicans need to operate moving forward?
Again, we're dealing with ideology. I mean, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was kicked off committee. She's going to be reinstated to committees. She is going to be a political force. And that's your fringe of your party. They've talked about impeaching, I think McCarthy even impeaching the Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, removing Adam Schiff from all committees. All of the things you mentioned, plus, to me, is a recipe for disaster in terms of the Republicans becoming again in power in the government. So is it possible that they'll do it? Yes, because the Republican approach, and again, it's all polarization. The Democrats were in power. They set up the January 6th committee, whether you want to debate whether it's right or wrong. It was a real big push and a real partisan push to support the democratic agenda. Similarly, now the Republicans are going to come in and they're going to try to push their agenda. But these are not majority agendas. These are all polarized agendas. It's about time that we would have bipartisan government in the United States, which we do not have. It is not a good thing, and it shows in the polls of what Americans think of Congress and what they think of the leadership in Congress. There was just a poll that came out, a C-SPAN poll, that most Americans want bipartisan leadership. In the 70+% is this poll. They want bipartisan leadership, and they're not getting it. If they're going to pursue the points that you just described and the ones that I reviewed, this very far-right agenda, they're not going to be able to muster the ability to win an election in 2024 across the board. That means presidency, it means the Senate, it means the House. So if they want to be short-sighted, they're going to go down in disaster and defeat. That's what I think right now. And also, we're going to have divided government. In the once this Congress figures out what it's going to do in terms of speaker, and it can't do anything until it picks a speaker, right, in the House, then they've got to figure out how are they going to operate dealing with the Democratic majority Senate and a Republican majority House. Is it just going to be, conflict and no compromise? This is a very, very bad, it augurs very, very badly for the future.
Yeah, very interesting. We'll have to wait and see. The Republicans say that, the Democrats have been operating free rein with no checks and balances, and right now is the time to implement those checks and balances, and that's why they were elected. On the one hand, they can walk and chew gum on the other, and also I think the recipe perhaps for success would be a way that these committees and these investigations would be presented in a way to the American people where it would sort of demonstrate how it would affect their everyday lives. So a lot of questions left unanswered. Mark Merowitz, we'll have you back. We have to talk about this a lot more. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Susan.